Okay, we are here with the legend himself, Dr. Wallach. Thanks for coming in, man.
Well, thank you, Dustin. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you coming down. Jill set us up here. And we got lots of questions. I want to just kind of give a broad,
Sure.
picture for people that haven't heard of you. But Doc, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and...
Sure. Okay, well, Justin, the thing that makes me different, I think, is I have a degree in agriculture. My major is in animal husbandry and nutrition. My minor is in field crops and soils. I have a degree in veterinary medicine. I also have a postdoctoral fellowship, which is the equivalent of a PhD degree in comparative pathology, doing autopsies on animals and people. And then I do have a degree in naturopathic medicine. I've been a naturopathic physician since 1982, licensed primary care physician. And so I have those four aspects which I draw from anytime I talk to somebody or try to figure out a patient's health problem and decide what to give them. So I'm a little bit different than an MD or an ND or a DO or a chiropractor.
So you really have a broad perspective, obviously.
Exactly.
And it's all about nutrition. It all ties together, right? So.
Well, yes, I did one big project with the National Institutes of Health back in the 60s and 70s. And in that project, I did 20,000 autopsies, 17,000 some change of over 454 species of animals, and 3,000 humans, and 10 million chemistries looking for pollution problems. And the basic gist of that study was that every animal, every human being that dies of what we would call natural causes dies of a nutritional deficiency disease. And we learned that all vertebrates, whether you're a human being or a crocodile or a hummingbird or a turtle or a fish or an elephant, requires 90 essential nutrients. 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 amino acids, 3 fatty acids. And you get those things, you reduce your risk of diseases, and you live longer. You don't get those things, you increase your risk of disease, and you die earlier.
Wow. Okay. So we skipped ahead a bit there. I want to go right into that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get that project? Before what was your career? Comparative pathology
Right.
started before that, right? And then.
Mm-hmm. Why me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's why I asked myself. Well, prior to going to university, during the summer times, I used to work with Marlon Perkins from the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom show. You're probably too young to remember that show, but he was the biologist on TV before the Crocodile Hunter. Okay. And so I worked for him maybe 5-6 years during the summer times. And when I graduated agricultural school, I was already into 2 years of veterinary school. And so I was a graduate student, even though I had 2 years of veterinary school left. I began to take comparative pathology courses towards my PhD degree, which turned out to be a postdoctoral fellowship. And I ran into the first mass die-off of pollution in America. Now, people had theorized it and they predicted it, but somehow it landed in my lab. Did all the chemistries, got it published in peer-reviewed, refereed scientific journals. I actually went around the states and the world lecturing on it because I was the first guy to discover it. Gave Perkins a copy of it because he was one of my first male mentors who was not a relative. And he helped me get a job in Africa, working in the White Rhino Conservation Project and the African Elephant Conservation Project. Caught 200 white rhinos, sent them back to the States. So if you see a white rhino in a zoo or wild animal park, it's either one that I caught or offspring that I caught.
Wow.
Moved 100 of them around in Africa and caught 100 elephants, adult elephants, and cold branded them to track their movements. So I was really into these large animal conservation projects. Well, 2 years into that, Perkins sends me a letter. Said, Wallach, I just got a big grant from the National Institutes of Health to study pollution as a contributing cause of death in animals in big zoos in the United States and Canada and Mexico and North America. And we're looking to see if pollution is a contributing factor to non-infectious diseases, epidemic diseases, things we think of as being natural causes. And you're the guy. You wrote the first paper on a mass die-off in America for pollution, so we're picking you to be the pathologist on the project. And of course, I was, wow. So I said, I can always go back to Africa, so I'm going to take this job. Went back. I worked for 12 years on it. Did my 20,000 autopsies, 10 million chemistries. And the book that came out of it, 1,200 pages, covers all these autopsies and all the chemistries. And the work showed that every animal and every human being that dies of natural causes, not trauma, not infections, but just heart disease, liver disease, lung disease, brain disease, that kind of stuff, that are attributed to age or genetics or autoimmune, those diseases are all caused by nutritional deficiencies.
So this whole thing with Marlon Perkins, I mean, how did he get that grant? I'm curious. How did that tie together like that?
Well, the St. Louis Zoo, of course, had a high profile because of his association with the Mutual Omaha Kingdom show, but it wasn't too far. It was really right across the highway from Washington University, and a very well respected university, medical school, Barnes Hospital, teaching hospital, and he and the head of the biology department there, a fellow by the name of Barry Commoner, who had actually run for president on the Independent Party several times on the basis of saving the environment, eliminating pollution, this sort of thing. Those two guys together applied for a grant to study animals that die of natural causes in the big zoos in North America and people who live within a 10-mile radius. What they wanted to do is use the zoo animals as the old Welsh coal miners used to use canaries. The canary in the mine story,
Yep.
where the Welsh coal miners would take the canaries out of the mine. And if gases would leak into the mine that were either toxic or that would suffocate you or explode, the canaries would die first, and they'd see the canaries drop off the perch and die. They would flee.
Test run kind of thing.
Yeah, they would flee and were able to survive. Well, Perkins had the very good idea that if we did the same thing but using zoo animals, there's 400, 500, 600 species of zoo animals in big zoos in big cities. There's bound to be a couple of species that would give us an early warning of pollution, imminent danger from pollution. And since I wrote the first paper on the mass out from pollution, they wanted me to be the guy, the pathologist in the project.
Wow. So pathology, this big project's awesome. We're going to get a bit more into that, but just talk about pathology, because, first of all, not a lot of people do this, would you say?
No, it's a very small club, if you will. And this is, like a hospital might have 200 physicians, surgeons and general practitioners that work for the hospital, but there's usually one pathologist. Okay? And so it's a very specialized piece of the medical system where somebody dies, you go to their house, you pick up the body, and by law in most places you have to do an autopsy to find out were they murdered or they died of natural causes. And so those are the sort of things you learn to do as a pathologist. And you also learn the causes of death of animals or people that are in experiments. They're either on drug experiments or new drugs or nutrition experiments or vaccine experiments. And in some cases, at the end of the study, let's say there's 50 animals in the study, you have to kill them all and then do autopsy, see if the drugs or the whatever vaccines cause any problems, kind of thing. And so this is where, as a pathologist, you have to know normal anatomy, you have to know the normal physiology, you have to know the normal biochemistry, and you really have to know more than a practicing physician. You take into account all the clinical records. In many cases, the physicians would be treating for diseases the patient didn't have, but they died of something the doctor didn't even know they had because he was a bad diagnostician.
And pathologists know more than the doctors.
Oh, than a practicing physician. Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's why I like pathology, because you can always find the answer. There's no unknowns.
There's also I think I read in epigenetics, there's a big difference between animal autopsies and human autopsies in that they leave out the cause of death or something. They don't explain that it's a deficiency.
In human beings, they don't. In human beings, they say died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And everybody assumes that's natural causes and this and the other. And so in animals, there's 5 different types of heart attack. We want to know which one it is because each one is caused by a deficiency of a different nutrient.
So why is that? Why wouldn't we take it to the next level for humans?
Well, medical doctors do not get 1 minute of nutritional training in 8 years of school. They have dietitians and nutritionists for stuff like that. That's low stuff. They're into surgery and pharmaceuticals.
Really?
It's kind of an ego thing. This is something that, we don't need to know that because that's something that some dietitian can know.
So right at the top there, they're simply kind of just leaving out a very important thing.
Well, of course, because nutrition is everything. We cannot run without nutrition. Now, the interesting thing to me, Dustin, is that every century there's thousands of failed medical theories. Going back to the days of the pharaohs, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago, there's failed medical theories at the rate of thousands per century. In the 20th century and 21st century are no different. All of the big medical theories of today are false. It's a pretty profound statement, but it's true.
Really?
All the medical theories today that we think of as guiding us to be healthy are false. With all the technology we have, with all the new things that we've brought into medicine, Americans are less healthy than we used to be. And the scary thing is our children children of your generation, my generation, will be the first generation of Americans who do not live as long as their parents. Most people will be burying their children, will be standing at graveside burying their children.
So our age is going up, our life expectancy is going down.
It's going down.
Yeah.